Hi, this is Dr. Ray, aiming to speak truth to power, and this is my daily thought. I watched President Obama's town hall on crime, policing, and racism in America last night. And as I watched it, as well as he answered the questions, as thoughtful as he was, as caring as he was, he missed and there were a few things he missed, but I just want to speak on one very important portion that he missed as it relates to this particular issue. What did he miss, you ask? Well, he missed why crime is higher in black neighborhoods. Right? So I want to break this down. Yes, crime is higher in black neighborhoods on average, right? Overall. What people miss though is that crime is not higher in all black neighborhoods. And these neighborhoods where crime is not higher actually run counter to the narrative, and they're not just exceptions that prove the rule. Instead, they are blueprints that we need to use to frame this issue correctly. Now, as it relates to crime, crime is related to three main factors that can be broken down in a host of ways. But the large factors are poverty, segregation, and high policing. Right? Poverty, segregation, and high policing are the main factors. And so I want to give you a counter to this that proves that proves the way that the way that we should think about crime and race in America. Take an area in Bowie, Maryland. Over 50% of the residents in this particular area have at least a bachelor's degree, so they have a 4-year degree from college. 25% of the population, so 1 in 4 people, have at least a master's degree or higher, meaning they have a master's degree, an MBA, a PhD, a MD, or a JD. So you have a lot of lawyers, a lot of physicians, and a lot of people with PhDs who are working in various places in and around Washington, D.C. Now, as a whole, this neighborhood looks like a predominantly white middle class neighborhood. I mean, there are large homes. The high occupancy the occupancy rate is extremely high. There's a very high percentage of homeowners. Now, however, there's just one exception, right? To this normal narrative we have. Oh yeah, and I should also add, the important thing for why we're talking about this particular area as it relates to crime, there have been 3 murders in this area in the past 7 years. This statistic alone places it as being one of the safest places to live in the United States. And I'm just using murder as one example. I mean, we could talk about other violent crimes. We could also talk about non-violent crimes. One of the safest places to live in the United States. And what makes this neighborhood different from the way that people normally think about neighborhoods? Well, this neighborhood is predominantly black. In fact, this neighborhood is 96% black. So let me say this again. This is a neighborhood that is extremely safe. 3 murders in the past 7 years. Very low on other types of violent crime. Very low on non-violent crime. Extremely educated and overwhelmingly black. Right? Now, what's interesting is that the black people who live in this neighborhood and other neighborhoods like it, because there are several more that we don't normally talk about. And I gave you some scholars you can look at to help you kind of think about these particular issues. The people who live in this neighborhood, they're not magic or tokens as Jesse Williams described, right? They are real, right? These are people who exist. What this means is that black people are not prone to criminality, as we heard a police officer on CNN say the other day. Right? Black people are not prone to criminality. Black people, instead, are prone to oppressive racism. And we have to be very clear about what people are prone to and what they're not. So poverty is linked to a lack of jobs, a lack of education, lack of training opportunities in a particular neighborhood and surrounding areas. Segregation systemically marginalizes an entire geographic area. It's not just about the people living there, but instead it's about the entire geographic area. And I should also add another counter to the main narrative we have. There are predominantly white neighborhoods that have extremely high crime rates. We never talk about them. Mainstream media acts as if they don't exist. They are the forgotten whites who are viewed as trashy, and sadly, Trump has them in the palm of his hands, ready to vote against their best interest. Finally, middle-class blacks, however, embrace W.B. Du Bois's talented 10th concept. Again, W.B. Du Bois was the first African American to get a PhD from Harvard University. He got that degree in sociology, went on to help found the NAACP, ran the Crisis magazine for a very long time, and then worked at Atlanta University creating some of the best research, best empirical research on urban areas and African Americans that our nation has ever seen in history. It's still unmatched. And his talented tip theory said that the top 10% of African Americans are going to be responsible and feel a need to be responsible to represent the race, embody politics and respectability, but more importantly, give back to local areas to help raise up the masses in a way that we know mainstream America doesn't do, as they forget not only these black neighborhoods and blame them for everything, but also white neighborhoods that run counter to what they're saying. What becomes important to this is that the counter or the narrative that black people don't care about black crime or black neighborhoods is simply false. It suggests that you really haven't been to black neighborhoods to actually see black people caring about crime and these particular issues. And what's important is not, see, this is where the narrative misses. Black people and people who care about these neighborhoods understand that in order to deal with crime, and I'm going to say this very slowly because it's important, that in order to deal with crime, particularly in black neighborhoods, in these particular neighborhoods we're talking about, that are poverty-stricken, that are poor, that are under-resourced, that it's more important to work to dismantle the main structural factors that lead to marginalization, relative deprivation, unjust treatment, and then, yes, crime. So we have to deal with poverty. We have to deal with segregation. We have to deal with over-policing. When we deal with these issues, we deal with crime. Right? So we deal with the root causes and not simply the tip of the iceberg or the flame on the grill, which is what people are doing when they talk about black on black crime. The other thing about black on black crime is that I actually despise that term, right? What people don't realize about crime is because we're so segregated, and we're more segregated today than we were in 1980, right? Ronald Reagan going into the White House changed a lot of things for America. And I know a lot of people like to talk about the good things Ronald Reagan did. He also did a lot of bad things that lead us to where we are now as it relates to segregation. So neighborhoods, think about this, are more segregated today than they were 36 years ago. People don't really realize that, right? So part of what that means then is that when we think about crime, we need to think about it intraracially. We need to think about it about geographic space, not about signaling out a particular racial group. So about 94% of all crime committed on blacks, where blacks are victims, are committed by other blacks. But see, this is what's key. See, people stop there. You can't stop there, right? Because what people don't realize is that about 86% of all crime committed against whites are committed by whom? Guess whom? Other whites. Right? And while people like to say, when it comes to police brutality, oh, well, whites are actually more likely to be killed by police than blacks. Well, whites overwhelmingly represent a larger proportion of the U.S. population, right? So that's what becomes key. But see, we can't stop there either, right? Not only are whites more likely to represent a higher percentage of the population, but what's key is that blacks are more likely to be overrepresented in who is killed by the police. So blacks only represent a slightly under 13% of the population. That's it. But they represent nearly a very high percentage of the percentage of people who are killed by the police. So we have to be careful about raw numbers, percentages, and likelihoods. These are all very different outcomes. But I'm distracting from the main point of what I want to make here. The point is that black people who embody the talented 10th are no more responsible, or black middle classers who don't live in these poor black neighborhoods are no more responsible for black communities we don't live in than anyone else. However, what's key though is that because of the talented 10th, we actually take on these neighborhoods as if they are our own. Some of us come from these types of neighborhoods and know how hard people work to put food on the table, working 2 quote-unquote full-time jobs that give them 30 hours a week with no benefits, no health benefits, no life insurance benefits, while raising kids trying to maintain a household. So middle-class blacks step up daily to make these neighborhoods better, right? We do our work with no cameras, for no fame, for no glory, but only for change to help the next kid who looks like us. So I'm issuing a challenge. Right? There have been a lot of challenges over the past few years. Hashtag challenges that went viral. People throwing water buckets all over the head, doing all sorts of stuff for great causes. Right? This is also a great cause. I'm issuing a challenge to people doing work in silence. Let's change that narrative. Doc your change. That's a new hashtag. right? Let's make it go viral. Doc your change. DOCYOURCHANGE. DOCYOURCHANGE. Doc your change. Document your change. I challenge everyone to show and document the work they are doing in communities that people say are lost or that we don't care about. Let's make this go viral. Doc your change. Finally, thank you for riding this wave with me of speaking truth to power. If you're enjoying this conversation, subscribe on YouTube for daily updates and send this to family members, friends, or coworkers to continue the conversation. Remember, conversations matter.